JourneyTalks podcast, your favorite podcast to reconnect with gratitude and inspiration, hosted by Jorge Gonzalez. Hello and welcome everybody to JourneyTalks podcast, your favorite podcast to reconnect with gratitude and inspiration. My name is Jorge Gonzalez and I am your host. I believe and I am convinced that behind every gratitude, there's a powerful story to be told. And this podcast is a space to share those stories, to pay attention to these stories, and to learn from one another. I have a very special guest with us this morning. And the reason why I'm bringing this guest is because I am convinced, check this out, guys. As humans, we all share this experience that we call life, being alive, right? And along the journey, we meet people that stay with us for a little short period of time and others that linger for a little longer, right? But the question is, who are the people, what are the situations in our lives that bring us to a crossroad, right? And we have to make a change in our lives, right? And who are these people that come to our lives that open doors for transformations of the mind and transformations of the heart? And I'm convinced that we are all together in this journey, right? We are sojourners, and the beauty of sharing stories and reconnecting with this thing that makes us human is our very own journey. So our guest is a very special friend of mine. We have known each other since we were little children, okay? I'll let him talk a little bit more about it, but I have invited him because this dude is incredible. So our guest is an award-winning video editor, music producer, digital artist, and incredible cook, all right? He is the creative director at Colored Keys Inc., a guy with an incredible heart and energy. He is humble and hilarious at the same time. You have seen some of his work in Netflix's Queer Eye, okay? And like my previous guests in the past, he's an artist, but you have known each other. You and I have known each other since we were kids. And the point of the story is from where we were at one point in our lives and where we are today. And so, without further ado, I want to introduce you to my very good friend, the one and only Carlos Gamarra. Carlos, welcome to JourneyTalks podcast. How are you this morning?
I'm excited to be here.
I'm so grateful that you're here. Thank you so much. So, tell us a little bit more about you. You are originally, we both are Puerto Rican. We live in the United States now, but you are originally from Humacao. Is that correct?
So I was born in Humacao, and then 5 years later, my family decided to move to the west side of Puerto Rico into a town called Moca, which is right next to Aguadilla, and in that northwest area where the beaches are beautiful and the people are so laid back and fun, and chill. Yeah, definitely West Coast vibes. It definitely reminds me of like when I moved to the United States. I was like, oh, this is what the people in the East are like, and then this is like the laid backness of the West Side, and I feel like it really because of the beaches and all that, I feel like it translates into Puerto Rico as well.
Yeah, I can see that. I can see that. All right, so let me see. I have tried to sing your praises a little bit, but is there anything else, anything that you're interested in lately? What's going on with your life these days? What are you cooking literally and figuratively? What's going on with you lately?
So to fast forward to now, so during the pandemic, which was like a really weird time to do it, but during the pandemic, I decided to incorporate myself, and I have a company. It's just me, but I am able to work with other creatives, bring them on, and not only bring them on, but like exchange knowledge. So I have been able to train some people and exchange some of the knowledge that I've acquired onto them, and then because a little bit of a sidetrack, because of the fact that we're not in an office environment anymore, some of that knowledge does not get transmitted anymore. So and especially because it's some of this knowledge is social knowledge, right? And things that we pick up while we're doing our work. So I'm trying to somehow bring that back into my life at least, because I'm a type of person who like learns by looking at someone else do it. Like I'm the greatest imitator, right? And then through that, I will like have my own internalize that and learn. But so I opened up my company, and have been working on various projects. Some of them, well, development, meaning that I've been helping companies create new shows that haven't aired yet, and then for like HBO Max, and then other projects like the project that I'm on right now is another project for HBO Max, and it's called Thruple, and it's about polyamory, you know, and the dynamics that go into being in a and deciding to pursue that lifestyle, right? So, and then you know, I'm working with the Metropolitan Museum of Art, uh, working on internal highlight reels that they do every year. I've been with them for 4 years now, which is very exciting because like, um, you know, most people in my field that are freelancers are mostly like jumping around, but thankfully, like the Met has been one of my go-to, and I have been their go-to. So we've been able to establish a relationship that far, you know, 4 years. Fast forward 4 years, you know, we're still working together, and you know, yeah, I look forward every time they reach out. I'm like so excited because they're a really good client and really good people, to be honest. And then I'm kind of exploring myself a little bit, you know, and the things that I like and enjoy doing, and kind of formalizing. And by that I mean like I love food. I've been cooking for the past 5 years for myself and for friends. I have friends that come over and I host them with food. So I recently applied for culinary school here in Manhattan.
Oh wow! Congratulations. That is awesome.
Thank you. So yeah, so hopefully next year during winter I start, but I applied for the Institute of Culinary Education here in Manhattan. So there's a lot. I'm doing a lot, but learning how to delegate, and also, but most importantly, you know, trust in my gut, like that first gut instinct, and trust that I have the capability and the knowledge to do it right, you know, and also just trust that everything's gonna be okay, that everything is okay, even though sometimes we might be blinded because we're so close to what we're doing at the moment. You know, we have like la gringola, the you know, we lose the peripheral. So trying to keep a distance, you know, so I can see everything, and in that be able to, you know, understand what's happening in my life, so I can be like, oh, this thing happened to me. I'm super happy that that happened to me, even if it was a bad, even if it's perceived as a bad thing, right? Because we tend to like put things into like this was good, this was bad, you know, without being a without you know, being able to see like, hey, there's good in the bad, and there's bad in the good sometimes, you know. So having a little bit more perspective.
No, listen, I think that's very deep. You're really hitting on some what I consider like spiritual principles of life. But I think this is a perfect segue, Carlos, because so this podcast is about sharing stories of gratitude, right? And so I think your story is fascinating. You and I it's interesting because we disconnected for a few years, right? And then we somehow got reconnected through social media, and it was incredible because we were able to actually not only stay in touch with social media. I think at one point I was able to go to New York, and we were able to connect. And we had brunch one morning, I remember, and we just hit it off once again, and it's just been super, super, super cool. This podcast is about sharing stories of gratitude, and for me, gratitude is not just when the things are going well. It's this opportunity that we have to go to a specific mindset and place in our minds and in our hearts, where we reflect and we realize that there's a lot for us to look in a positive way. And when we have the ability to look at things, maybe for lack of a better word, to look at the glass half full instead of glass empty and half empty, there's something helpful. We can go through life knowing that life is happening for us, and that we can pursue dreams, or overcome obstacles in life. And I think that I just can't wait for you to share some of those stories with us. I mean, this whole journey and pivotal change that you're making to entertaining cooking, and learning how to cook and getting more experience in a professional way in that field, I think is fascinating. So I'm curious to hear more about it. Why don't we just go deep in it? I would like to first ask you, Carlos, this whole experience of being you won an Emmy award, right? And then you were nominated for another Emmy award with Queer Eye. So tell us about that experience. Tell us about what was that like to have an opportunity like that when the show promotes such great things, and it pushes people to look at each other as humans, right? It pushes people to recognize our shared humanity, and I'm curious as to what it was like for you from the back scene when you're editing the show, and how much that role was like for you in your professional life and as an individual. Tell us a little bit more about it.
So when I got into the show, they already had, they were doing the first and second season, and they had asked me to work on it, and because of scheduling, I wasn't able to form part of that first group. And they finished first and second season, and they won Emmys, and I was like, oh wow, that's so awesome. And I was super happy because I had a lot of friends in that group, and I was like, that's awesome. I know those people. They are really hard workers. They have a very high work ethic, very high standards, and that's what wins awards, to be honest. And then I got the opportunity to work on season 3, and I worked on season 2, but it was in the back end. So I returned for season 3 and 4, and I was so certain that we were gonna win again, because of like everyone still had the same attitude. I was re-entering into a group where those high standards were not only implemented, but valued, and we kept pursuing, how can we make this better, how can we make this better. So I immersed myself into that. Like I gave myself completely to that process, and gave myself to the work relationships that we were like, growing too. And after we finished, it was a big overhaul. It was a lot of work because everyone's working at a really high level. It was a lot of work. It at the end you feel super drained, but with a lot of satisfaction, because of the type of work that we were doing. It was like actually making people like reflect, and go into introspect, because like I feel like we're constantly entertaining ourselves and like distracting ourselves, and we barely have the time or space, mentally, sometimes, to actually like think about our something as simple as what happened during the day. Like what did I feel, what did I think, who did I interact with that actually like affected me in a positive or negative way. All those things, you know. And so I knew that we were making a difference with the work that we were doing, and it was great. It and once we were finished with those 2 seasons, we got we got the notification of like, hey, we're submitting the show, and then the show got submitted to the academy. The academy accepted it, and we became like a nominee, and then we got invited to go to LA, and we it was a huge event. I was like so taken back, uh, because like everyone's like in suit and ties, walking the red carpet, and to be honest, Jorge, like I in my mind while I was like working, I was like, I just have to do the best work, right? And this was like around, and this was like before like the whole Black Lives Matter thing happened, and but I knew that I was a minority in the work group that I was working on with, right? So like going into the event, I knew that for me, besides it being a big accomplishment that I was able to set out for myself and do it with this group of people, um, I knew that being there meant like I'm here because I've set it in my heart and my mind to represent, right? To not only represent myself but my family, my friends, Puerto Rico, some way, uh, in some way, right? And when I was there, I felt like I needed to be there, present completely, because I was there representing, a minority. And also like I believe in leading by example, and I've always during my whole career I've always had the the sentiment, the thought of like, I want to show everyone that if you make certain choices, or more like if you have a certain approach to things, there you can achieve things. An Emmy is just an achievement. Like it's an important achievement. Yeah, but it's not the end goal. The real thing is like how can I like train myself? How can I uh, put myself into the mindset of like how can I achieve something? And for me, the achievement was great work. The award is just a product of doing great work. But my focus and the team's focus was like, we have to make this really good, you know, and strive, and nothing below that. So so I wanted to show people, it's like, hey, if you put your head down and like really focus, like hyper focus on something, things will happen. You know, things will happen. So, but there's also something to be said when you hyper focus on something that's negative, like the byproducts of like something negative, like something will affect you negatively, right? You will attract that. Will attract all those things. But yeah, me being at those award shows has always and will always be about representation. Because there's a lot of work to be done. There's a lot of conversations to be had, about representation and minorities and BIPOC, and gay people. All of that. So yeah, it was important. It was important to me, and it's very special to me because at the end of it all, we did work that actually mattered and affected people in some way.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Thank you for sharing, because I mean, I've been a fan of the show for a few years now, and once I knew that you were a part of it, I was just blown away. I think it's just phenomenal because the stories that they're put out there, stories of reconciliation, stories of healing, stories that help us bring down walls that are just a result of perhaps things that we have learned over the years that are ready for an upgrade. And I think that the way you guys have gone about it is very fresh, it's very refreshing. And so I thank you for being part of that process. Now, let me ask you. So again, this podcast is about stories of gratitude, stories of reflection, of moments or people that we have met along the way. So, how would you define gratitude, or what is the role of gratitude in your life right now?
To be completely honest, I feel like I'm I'm still learning what that means, for myself, and being able to like really open my mind and heart to like slow down and take a deep breath, even, and be and feel gratitude towards, like, I can breathe, I can walk, you know um and really like paying attention to the smaller things that we take for granted, because then, like, the bigger things seem even bigger too, you know if we're like, oh, I'm grateful for the toast that I had today, that I'm able to like have a little bit of a spread, make something for myself, eat it, have the time to eat it, and really just, you know feel the food and feel the nutrients go through my body. um I think it's gratitude. I think self-awareness is has, there's an order. I feel like in the past years I've learned of self-awareness. Before, I was like, wait, there's a conscious and subconscious. Whoa, 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 whoa. Hold on. I'm missing out. FOMO. So I started learning about, like, oh, there's things that happen like consciously and there's things that happen subconsciously, and I feel like I have to bring gratitude into the conscious, into the present, into the now, so that I can have that so I can have perspective. Because, like, we were talking before about like how we view things, like, this is good, and we label it, right? This is good, this is bad. And it's like, look, even in the bad, even if we lose, right? Even if we lose, there's still something to learn there. Even if we win, there's lessons there too. Like, how did I get there? How did I get there? Right? So I feel like, first and foremost, self-awareness, so I can, like, you know have a immersed experience, and then from there, I move on to, like, so what am I grateful for? What things in my life, if we're talking about accomplishments, what accomplishments I've made that I can be grateful, or who have I chose to be part of my life? Who do I relate myself, and I'm grateful for those people? Who are those people? Like, what are the small rituals that I do for myself or other people that I'm grateful that I can do those or receive them? Because it's also like, I give and I also receive. I'm the type of person that I tend to just, like, give until I'm completely depleted, and that's the extreme of giving. That's the extreme of serving. You have to also, yeah, recharge, and great being grateful is one of those things. It's like, wait, let me take a minute, let me look around, look around and inside, right? What is going on? What's going on? Let me see. Oh, I'm grateful that I have a chair to sit on. I These are like super simple things, and they might also be like, oh, that's kind of silly, but at the same time, it's like, we really take these things for granted.
Yes. Would you allow me to piggyback here with you for a second?
Yeah, go ahead.
Because I think that's fascinating. The fact that we are so prone to ignore those small things in life that they are the reminders that life is a gift. And it's so easy for us to overlook them because we just take them for granted. And you said it, to having that inclination towards self-awareness and to understand what happens in our subconscious, and how they manifest or show up in our consciousness. Just to understand that and to have that awareness of self, in my experience, have been one of the most powerful things and liberating things in my life. It sounds like you have been able to tap into that awareness, and it has served you, and it has given you some sort of like direction. What would you say then? What would you say then when it comes to like people or situations that have brought you to a place or a moment of realization, that whether it was a positive or a negative experience, you look back and because of that self awareness, you were able to handle that situation? Let's say it was something negative, right? How were you able to not be stuck there and therefore understand, learn the lesson, and move on? One, that's on the negative side, right? But if on the positive side is, okay, so what helped me to get here? What should I be, for lack of a better word, proud about myself? Because we have a hard time sometimes, at least for me, to affirming ourselves. You know, affirming ourselves sometimes we think is being cocky. There's a big difference, I think, between self-love and tapping into courage and bravery, and versus being cocky. So who, let's go back to, what are some of those people, what are some of those circumstances or situations that brought you to a place of reflection, self-realization, and then out of that a moment of gratitude?
So a couple of years back, I moved to El Paso pursuing a project uh, with 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 a business partner, and I think I one of the main reason was I need to find out what this is about. I need to pursue this, and just I don't want any regrets, right? But it the I spent 8 months there. It really didn't work out to the and I experienced a lot of extremes, meaning that um, I went I went broke. I went into like a big debt, trying to pursue that dream. I distanced myself from everyone because I was living in New York and moved to El Paso. Not only from my friends but my family, because most of my family back then was in Puerto Rico. So I did a lot of extremes thing. Even climate, like it's really hot there. So I experienced a lot of extremes. Um, and I was hyper focused on only this thing. I forgot about myself completely. Nothing else mattered. My health didn't matter. I just wanted to make this project work. Right? We were out there. We were trying to get a radio station, um, uh, and it didn't work. It didn't work. It really it to the point, and it so once I figure this is not working, then guilt kicked in. Like you're so irresponsible. Look at what you've done, right? Like you're talking down to yourself. And I feel like I didn't realize how bad it was, how bad of like how extreme it was, until my sister, one of my sister, my older sister Angela, she calls me to tell me that she's pregnant, right? She's gonna have my little niece, right, Alejandra. She's 4 now, but at the time she was like, "Hey, I'm pregnant," and I didn't. And you're what is the reaction, right? You're supposed to get excited. You're supposed to like, "Oh my God, I'm so. What can I do? I can't wait to be there." I knew something was wrong when with me when I didn't react.
Mm, wow, Carlos.
The way I would have reacted, right? I knew myself enough to be like, I was like, hey, that's cool. I was trying to be like as supportive and excited for her, right? But deep down, I was none of those things. I could, it was, once that happened, it triggered like, let me look into myself, like what's going, and then I knew I was completely done. I was depressed. Was super super blinded to like what my reality was, and that's the one thing that life was like, yo, you've just received one of the most amazing news that someone can receive, and you didn't have the energy, the spirit, anything to like really like hype yourself up. And after that phone call, I immediately called my mom. And moms are so special because like she was like, you, it's like, Carlos, you are you okay? You sound different. And that just, it just brought me to tears because a few days earlier of that phone call, I walked out of my house and literally walked into the desert. And I was like, if I don't come back from this walk, I don't care. You know, it was really hard. And if it wasn't for me trying to like call other people and just maintain myself kind of lucid, I wouldn't have come back. Like I probably would have dehydrated, just slept on the floor, and that's it. That no more Carlos, right? Yeah, because um even the partner that I was pursuing this project with, like they had their own extremes that they were dealing with, right? Yeah. There was like there were drugs involved because like I couldn't deal with it, right? Unprescribed drugs, like it was really bad. It was really bad to the point that I left the house and I was like, I don't care. And then but in that darkness, there was a lot of there was little bits of light, because it's like at some point I was like, why are you treating yourself this way? You wouldn't even treat your best friend this way, you know? And I literally, like, you wouldn't, like, one of my best friends is my friend Danny. It's like, you would never do this to Danny. You would never allow someone to talk to Danny this way, but why would you do it to yourself?
Isn't that so interesting, Carlos, that we are our worst enemy? And listen, we are saying things. I'm not a guru. I'm not saying anything new. I think what's happening here is that we are creating a safe space for each other to share stories and to recognize that at the end of the day, we're very similar, right? But what a powerful thing to realize that yes, this I'm in the middle of the dark cave. I'm in the middle of the pit. Um, this is also part of the human experience. How do we access that self love? How do we access, who are the people that show up? What are the guides or the angels or the support system, whatever we want to call it? Words can help us a lot, right? To give us images for support.
So I'm starting to to receive some realizations, some information that there's still hope, right? Because at the end of it all, I went into that, like I went and pursued this, but I knew in the back of my pocket that if I returned to New York, I would, in at least 6 months, I would have put myself back on my feet. But and I did, like I did, but the toll that it took on me, like spiritually and mentally, was way beyond 6 months. Like 6 months was just like the money, but I didn't know how much I hurt myself. So I decided I have to drop my stuff. I left everything in El Paso because I moved from New York to El Paso. I moved all my furniture, TV, all the things that I had, and owned. They stayed in El Paso. So se acabó from zero. I'm at zero because I left El Paso, left my things there because I ran out of money, so I can't move it back, I ran out of money, so I was like, ciao, I'm leaving El Paso, I'm leaving my stuff, I'm going. And I went back to Puerto Rico because my mom was like, you have a home here, please come back. And I did. And it was really hard. It was really hard because I would wake up and I would wake up crying, with feelings of shame, like guilt. Now shame and guilt were like the biggest one. They were the biggest ones for me. And but that's when I went back to Puerto Rico, that's when that wound, that's when it started the healing process, you know. I needed a break. I need a break. Um, and I also, one of the other things that started this whole journey of self awareness was that I growing up, I wasn't really close to my dad, you know, and I always wanted my my dad to be a certain dad. I wanted him to behave a certain way because like TV portrayed dads a certain way, and like they have to be this way. And without knowing that my dad is my dad. You know, I can't force someone to be something they're not. You know, not saying that my dad, but my dad was a good dad. Let's put that into perspective. But um, I wanted something more with my dad, not knowing that the real is like I should have started it. If I wanted it, I never told him that I wanted that. I always assumed that he should have known to do that, right? And then my parents, when I was in my 20s, early 20s, my parents got divorced, which was something that I never imagined because I grew up Christian and like marriage is forever, and these things don't happen in these type of environments. They're gonna grow old together, and then divorce happened in my family. Um, and then so it made that dream or that thought of my dad being the dad that I wanted him to be like even further, to the point where it created ¿cómo se dice? Rencor. Yeah, I had really deep feelings of resentment towards my dad, you know, and he didn't even know. That's the crazy thing. Like it was just like me being like, I feel so mad and angry because my dad isn't the dad, you know.
Well, because those were your expectations, right? And it's only human. We all have them. I listen. I resonate with you right now because we all have those expectations towards our parents, and then we realize when we meet their humanity and we recognize our own humanity, we're like, ah. Still, I had all these expectations in you because I needed these things from you. But you know, it life steers us in different ways, right?
Yeah, I think I was able to like you know, cross that when I figured it's like, look, our parents are just people trying to figure it out, you know, because like, and now that I'm in my 30s, I'm like, oh my god, I can't believe like my parents were like raising me in their 30s, you know, like I'm still like figuring stuff out about myself. How did they do it? So I feel like they went through a big feat. But yeah, so I went back to Puerto Rico, started that healing process, and I met up with my dad. I was like, hey, I have to talk to you. You know, I have to talk to you about something. And he was like, no, okay, let's talk, let's sit down. And I told him like, look, for years now, I felt this resentment towards you, because of like I had these expectations, because I've I blamed the divorce on you, and I want to apologize. You know, I want to say I'm sorry. You know, and I want to tell you that I really need you as a dad. You know, to at least be there and support me, because like um, I'm doing things that are really hard. You know, and the more support I have, the better it's gonna be. I just need you in my life. If I don't get you, it's what I told him, and it felt like I dropped 100 pounds, because imagine carrying all that for years, for years. Every time like I would think of my dad, it was always like, but my dad, you know. Or I would hear someone else talk about their dads and like all the things, and I'm like, yeah, that's cool, you know. Never thinking of like, man, but like, you know, my dad did these other things, and at the end of it all, our parents do the best they can do with what they have, and that meaning like experiences, knowledge, finances, what they do the best. They do the best. because uh, they come from another world, really, if you think about it. They've experienced the world. They've had other experiences that we might never experience. You know, my dad is an immigrant. Like he came from Peru to Puerto Rico, met my mom, and like who knows what he went through when he grew up in Peru. You know, so it's like we'll never know. We'll never know what our parents went through, cause like we're their children. They'll probably some of these parents will never open up to be like, yo, like I had a I didn't have these things, you know, and I tried to provide them for you, but and even even the trying was a big feat, you know. So here, but here we are. So how do we like be more empathetic? How can we like open up to understand where they're coming from and where they're going, you know, or what they went through, more like.
Carlos, yeah, what I'm hearing this conversation, and I love it. First of all, thank you so much for your willingness to open up about this aspect of your story, this part of your story, right? Which is the relationship with our parents. I think we all have, if we are honest with each other, we can unpack certain areas of growth, right? But I'm hearing a very deep sense of gratitude for the way that they showed up for you in moments of turmoil and moments of despair. I'm hearing a sense of gratitude of somehow you finding this still small voice, for lack of a better word, within yourself, right? Of remembering, whether it was remembering the love and the sense of belonging that you have with your parents in the midst of the situations that we're going through because of the divorce and all of that. But then this ability to like come back to a place where you can restore yourself and start again, that is fascinating. And I so appreciate the fact that you are so open to share that with us and with our listeners, because I think people can relate to that. I'm sure you're not the only one that have gone through a process that you have to reinvent yourself, right? Go ahead.
Well, I think my biggest fear with my dad was like, I think what eventually triggered me to take a step forward was the idea of like your 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 dad could pass away and you will never have that conversation, so I think like time I felt like you have to do it sooner than later, because life will pass, something might happen, and you will never ever be able to free yourself. So like I could have potentially set myself up for like a really big pain, just because I wasn't just because I was resentful, you know?
That's amazing, right? Because we when we are in places of pain or suffering, we forget that it's so easy for us. Our mind goes to a place of self-protection, right? And we overlook the fact that all these things are coming from a need. But we're so afraid of being vulnerable and recognize that we have this need. And so it's that inner child longing for that reconnection, right? And I have found, and this is more of a question for you. In my life, I have found that when I lean into that place of vulnerability, as uncomfortable and as fearful as it could be, something more powerful is on the other side of it. And so that has been a wonderful north, I mean, that I try to follow. But I it sounds like you have been given permission to yourself to lean into those spaces, and here you are, like, and how beautiful it is that life has given you opportunities to reconnect with yourself, to reconnect with the support system that you have around you, and to also open up to be received to receive the support from new places as well, you know.
Yeah. I mean, like, so that would be like on lessons that I've learned, gratitude lessons I've learned from being with my family, and then like from work, right? I've suffered at least the ones that I can count, right? But at least like really three really bad burnouts, and I just I just recovered from one, because I knew it was a burnout because I got the shingles. You know, it was so much stress. I was putting myself through so much stress, and really without taking care of myself. You know, not only with satisfying the needs that I have as a person, you know, but also like health wise. Like I wasn't eating the correct portions. I wasn't eating the correct food that was bringing the nutrients that I actually need. I was it was just there was no structure to my life. You know, I was waking up at weird hours. I was going to sleep at weird hours. I was getting the work done, but at the expense of not of myself, right? So I had to again go back. Like, so the shingles put me down. Like, I had to quit. I had to make a decision. I had to quit a job that I was currently on. I was like, guys, I have to quit. I can't. I am not fully recovered. I have to go. Sorry, you know. Um, and I did. I left. And the cool thing about that is, like, because I had suffered burnouts before, one of the things that I learned previously is that it's okay to say no. It's okay to quit. You know, it's okay, and there's no shame. There's no there like, yes, you're breaking a commitment, but like, you oh you're the only you're you. Like, there's only you. You're the one who, my mom likes to say, like, you're your own best friend. You know, like, you're the only person that's gonna be with you literally, you're the one that spends time with yourself 24/7, you know. So you have to take it. It's like, take care of yourself, because your body's gonna carry is the one that's carrying you. Um so uh yeah, like, after suffering a big burnout, this last big burnout, I was like, okay, I'm doing too much. I'm obviously doing too much, but I'm not doing enough for myself, you know. So there, you know, so it's like, everything just like was not in balance. You know, there was an imbalance. So that took me to, like, rethink a lot of things. And also, like, after going to the doctor was like, you have to change your lifestyle. If not, like, you can die. He literally told me, like, you could die of a stroke, you know. So I was like, okay, I have to make some changes. But now it's almost like life telling me, like, well, you had your chance, now you have to do it, you know. It was like, you had your chance to do it because you wanted to. Now you have to do them. There's no other choice. Okay, so, like, I hear you, life. Let's do it. You know, let's do it. But also, you know, these changes, I I'm starting to, like, to assimilate them, but not enough. I guess, like, the old Carlos would have been, like, super strict about them. And yes, there are some things that are non-negotiable, but it's like with food, for example. It's like, oh, I can't eat these, like, chips or, like, salty stuff, right? So how can I find new flavors and discover new food, right? That will still make me feel good, and make me feel like I'm not being overtly strict with myself, right? Um, and yeah, it's been a wonderful experience, and I'm still going through it. I'm still basically, like, what James Clear in his book, Atomic Habits, likes to say. It's like stacking habits. So, like, you basically, like, insert new habits between existing habits, you know. So, like, trying to do some of that, trying to, like, change 1% of what I do, you know. And not, because, like, we tend to, like, oh, I have to change, so let me just throw everything out. And, you know, we tend to go to the extreme. So there's other alternatives, right? Some people like extremes. I've done extremes before, and I've I haven't ended up completely where I want to be. So the new approach I'm doing is, like, let me just change 1%. So small changes, they compound into a big one, right? Small changes, big results, right? Um, so and a lot of those things have uh, have come internally. It's really about being patient, self-aware, and gratefulness. Because it's like I suffered burnout because I wasn't satisfied with what I had. I was too close to it to realize like, oh, I've accomplished all this, you know, I've accomplished all this. I've gained all this experience. I've I've met all these people. I still have my family with me, you know, and some we tend to like finish something and want something more, but not more. It has to be bigger, and better. And it's just, excuse me. It's always like no more, 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 without really like taking a step back and being like, this is good. Yes, I'm not saying like don't pursue, right? Don't keep growing, but at the same time, it's like you need to take a break and a step back to be like, okay, this is good. Let me see. Let me enjoy it, because that's the other thing. It's like, oh, for example, I won the Emmy. No, let's go. We have to go. We have to make more money. Yeah, to the next thing. It has to be bigger. And it's not necessarily has to be bigger. I guess it's more about like, how can we make ourselves feel better, you know yeah, and also be like, yo, you've done this, uh you've accomplished that, like, yeah, o sea, we tend to like overwhelm ourselves without even like taking the time to be like, yo, thank you, and I think myself, I'm like, thank you for doing this, like, thank you for planting the seeds back then, thank you for like, because a lot of the things that I've done already are now producing, sometimes we're like spreading seeds, and that's okay, and sometimes we get exhausted, but we have to be patient enough to know that we did that, and then we have to be aware, because some of those seeds come back to us, not necessarily as the original seed, but in another way, so we have to recognize them. That's why I say, like, keep your hopes and dreams close to your mind and heart, because like, life will provide them. You will provide them for yourself.
Yeah, it's this constant relationship of the relationship that you have with yourself, with the narratives that you have in your mind, and the courage and the ability that we have to deal with them, to address them, to change them, right? So, Carlos, bringing this to some sort of closing, because this conversation is rich and we can be here for hours, right? But so we talked about how in this episode, I really appreciate the fact that you have mentioned how, gratitude can also come from very challenging moments, and gratitude also shows up in moments where you receive that support, in moments of crisis, right? But let me ask you this. I mean, you now have this new goal that you're working with, this new project of cooking and learning and going to cuisine school, right? Culinary school. Thank you. So, what are if I ask you, what is one special quote? What is one motto? What is one thing that you are trying to live your life by at this very moment in your life? What would that be?
um I think one that I've used in the past, that I'm trying to like incorporate again into my life, is you are responsible for what you put out into the world. And I think before, for me, it just meant like it translated into, you are responsible for the work that you put out into the world, you know but I feel like now it's really everything, you know feelings, thoughts, words, work, um help, uh self-love, all of that stuff, everything has an effect on everything that surrounds us. on a conscious level and on a subconscious level, on the present and maybe the future, right? So it's it's that quote uh, that I kind of like embrace, because it's like, for example, in at this point in my life, it's like, what is the present Carlos gonna do for the future Carlos, for that future person? Because like, I feel like we know the people who are deep down. If we really think about it, if we really take the time to meditate on it, we really know who we want to be, you know so what steps am I taking now, even if they're small, especially if they're small, to become that person that we want to be, right?
Would you say that there's that aspect from within us, the truth self within us, very gentle, in a very gentle way, in a very consistent way, in saying this is who you are, but you have to work at it. I think, you said that, and I resonate with it, because I have felt that over the years in my life, but I also recognize the moment that I have ignored that voice. And that's tela pa cortar, like we say in Spanish, right? That's a theme for another episode, right? Because I agree with you. I think there's an aspect of us that knows exactly what we need to do, knows exactly how to go about it, but there are a lot of things in the way that keep us from taking those small steps, or providing that consistency to get to where we need to be.
I have a professor. I went to visit him like a couple years ago. He has a studio in his backyard, and we were sitting in his studio. And he was like, he looked at me into my eyes, and he was like, "You already know who you are. You already know who you are." And he didn't say anything else. He left me at that. He was like, "You already know who you are. Like, from the beginning, from since you were born, you know who you are." And I was like, whoa, that's so trippy to hear, right? Because it's like, what? But then, like, you start thinking about it and meditating on it, and it's like, yeah, I know who I want to be, you know. So the closer we get to like taking the steps and achieving that, I feel like there's we can find way more gratitude and way more happiness, because I tell myself, like, if I can go to bed, close my eyes and fall asleep, I'm at peace. If I can't, then let me do things that will bring me at peace. O sea, sometimes we start thinking about things that we have to do, or things that happen, whatever. But the truth is, like, we have to find that peace, that balance, and then it really makes for a more, it allows for more space to be able to see what we don't, and then once we do realize that, we're like even more grateful, and that brings more energy, so you can keep taking those steps forward.
That's wonderful. Carlos, thank you so much for being with us this morning. Um, I I'm trying to do this thing as I was brainstorming what are the cool things that we can do in this podcast to make it appealable and for people to continue to stay connected. One of my good mentors, his name is Juan Algarin, and he's a mentor and a friend. And he said, you know what, it'll be cool if you ask your guests who do they think should be the next guests on the show. And so I would love to, throw that question to you and ask you, do you have anyone in particular that you think would be a good guest to bring into this conversation and to bring to this podcast to expand these conversations?
Yeah, my good friend Cristian Mercado, he would be a good candidate. He has always, yeah, he has always been there for me. He also has an interesting story because he grew up in Puerto Rico as well, and then ended up moving to Ithaca, New York. And yeah, he's a great person to consider. So hopefully he says yes, or you get to connect or at least meet him. But yeah, Christian for sure.
Friends, this is the second episode of Journey Talks podcast, and our guest this morning has been no other than Carlos Gamarra. And if you have a chance, go check out his work. If you have an opportunity, hopefully you got something out of this conversation. I certainly got a lot. I want to thank you, Carlos, for your truthfulness, your honesty, for your bravery, being able to be vulnerable, but more importantly, for once again, cultivating this friendship that we have together. I wish you nothing but the best. I think culinary school is going to be phenomenal for you, and I can't wait to have an opportunity where whether you come to Miami or I go back to New York and you're the cook, because I want to check out those skills, okay?
Absolutely, anytime.
Okay, brother. Take care. Thank you so much. This is, once again, Journey Talks podcast, your favorite podcast to reconnect with gratitude and inspiration. Thank you so much for being with us. See you next time. Thank you for watching. Make sure you like and subscribe to our channel. Share your feedback, hit that notification bell, and let's keep the conversation going.